KoitCast.
Today's guest is a featured analyst for Travel Channel's Paranormal Caught on Camera. Guest on History Channel's The Curse of Oak Island Drilling Down and The UnXplained with William Shatner, as well as tech specialist on SyFy's Haunted Collector team. He's also an event speaker and an author following the release of his book Grains of Sand, Tales of a Paranormal Life. Please give a huge Koit welcome to Brian Cano. Hi Brian, and welcome to KoitCast.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me.
No worries, it's a pleasure, and thank you ever so much for coming along. I am super lush today, I hope you are too.
Pretty lush.
I would say, that is some pretty lush hair you've got, by the way. I'm going thin on top, so well played to you.
Thank you.
Right, Brian, let's start with the old classic. Who are you? Where you're from? How would you describe yourself? All that good stuff.
Well, my name is Brian J. Cano. I'm a paranormal researcher from Staten Island, New York. For the past 22 years, I've been delving into the mysteries of the unknown and looking into all things paranormal. Started out as a ghosts and spirits guy, but ever since I got on the television show Paranormal Caught on Camera, it's really expanded my reach into cryptozoology, ufology, and pretty much everything under that paranormal umbrella.
So you've got a finger in every pie, so to speak.
Kinda, yeah. Yeah, you could say that.
Excellent. Well, I just did, literally. So, what was technically your first introduction to the paranormal? What happened to you to spark off your career?
So many people ask me that question, and it didn't quite happen that way. It wasn't one thing that flipped the switch on, or there wasn't an experience in my youth that put me on a path. What put me on this path was, I guess you could say, boredom. Back in 2002, some friends and I decided to start doing a cable access show. Now, here in the States, cable access is required by law that every transmitting station needs to have some public space for the public to come for free and pretty much put on whatever they want. It's written into the law for various reasons, but we decided to do a show on urban exploration. And it was called Scared on Staten Island. Now, at this point, I was in a very skeptical place in my life. When you're a child, you believe in everything. There's no reason not to. Very seldomly do you meet a skeptical child. You believe in Santa Claus or Father Christmas, Easter Bunny, Tooth Fairy, Jesus, what have you. And as you get older, you start losing all these figures. You're told, oh, well, we kind of made that up. And what does that do for the rest of your worldview? You go into it thinking, yeah, I can't trust anything. And we're seeing this very visibly in the States right now. But back in 2002, I came at it as a skeptic. And the point of the show was we have a lot of abandoned places here on Staten Island, New York. And there's lots of legends, lots of urban tales about ghosts, satanic rituals, all these weird things happening in these places. And we felt, okay, if these places are indeed as haunted as everyone says they are, we should be able to go in with ourselves, some cameras, and our five senses and capture something. And that was the genesis of what became this, I guess you could call it a career. I can't believe I'm still doing this. I love it. But it wasn't planned. It wasn't something that I said, this is what I'm going to get into. With the exception of when I was a child, I loved the show In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy. And I remember actually, I don't remember too much about the episodes themselves, but I remember watching the end credits and it flashed all these different pictures of Amelia Earhart, Easter Island, Stonehenge. And in my little kid brain, I said, I'm going to go to all those places. I'm gonna find out all those mysteries, and I kind of have. I've been all over the world exploring and researching, and yeah, maybe that was the one thing that changed for me.
It could have been. And do you have a tick list of those childhood things? I'm going to do that you've now ticked off, literally.
Not so much a list, but when I do get to a place, like for instance, several years ago, I think it was 6 or 7 years ago, I hosted a cruise through the Bermuda Triangle. Left out of Miami, went to Old San Juan. We went to the points and we sailed through it. And in my mind, I thought, I'm in the Bermuda Triangle. All right, check. When I've been to Stonehenge several times, each time I can't believe I'm there. If I could just go back and tell my younger self, just have some patience, you're going to get there.
You will get there. I've not even been to Stonehenge, and it's only like a couple of hours from me. It's weird,
So
isn't
many
it?
tourists, so
Yeah,
many
I
people
know.
like me go, and it keeps you from going.
No, I would love to go, and in fact, I'm going to write that down because I should be going there. That's silly that I have not when I love this stuff. So I'm writing that down. I'm going to make that reality. Um, so you obviously you didn't plan necessarily to go into it. You found yourself drifting into this line of work. We'll call it that. What questions were you aiming to resolve as part of your setup for this cable scenario you did?
In the beginning, it was to find the logical, rational explanations for all these things that are reported as paranormal. Okay, you're hearing a noise, you're seeing a shadow form, something is happening. Well, the first explanation for me would not be a spiritual one. It would not be, yes, that's a ghost. It's got to be a ghost. There's a million explanations that could stand in before you get to that. But as my favorite fictional consulting detective would surmise, once you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. And that's how I approach things, not necessarily to be a skeptic and debunk for the sake of I'm going to prove you wrong. I just wanted to get down to what was really happening.
Had you expected to literally not debunk but prove that there was no, you know, reality to these scenarios?
At the time, yes, because the burden of proof is on the other side. Okay, you've got to convince me that this is happening.
Mm.
Otherwise, I could say, yeah, there's a floating spaghetti monster outside my window. Really? Sure, why not? Can't disprove it. But again, the burden of proof is on the other court. So I felt it would be fairly easy to say, well, we can't prove that it is happening. All right, then that's what we're left with. These days, I've shifted massively, and it was a lot of little things that did it. Um, I call them grains of sand because starting with that cable access show, every book I read, every case I went on, every person I spoke to, I was been mentored. I went to conventions. I tried to get as much as I could under my belt, and each one I felt like, oh, this is going to be it, and I was given a grain of sand as proof. Okay, by itself, a grain of sand is not very impressive. You look at it, you say, this is it,
Mm.
and you drop it. Oh, next case. Nope. Oh, this is gonna be good, but nope. Oh, watch that TV show. Nope. Grain after grain after grain after grain. And after several years, I felt like, okay, this isn't going anywhere. And I looked down, and metaphorically speaking, I was standing on a beach made up of all those grains of sand that I had dropped. And I had to consider what that meant, that it wasn't any one thing, but collectively, all these things together show that there's something out there, there's something going on. And to me these days, I'm no longer a skeptic, I'm a skeptical believer in that I know the phenomena exists. It's the people who report it that I'm skeptical of.
Yeah. Yes, I agree with you on that. I'd liken it to pieces of a massive puzzle. You know, there's pieces everywhere, and we're just
Yeah.
building up that bigger picture. Um, and I agree with you. You can trust the phenomenon because if it's there, it's there. You can't trust the people because they can spin yarns about anything,
Yeah.
and that is a difficult thing, overcoming the human psyche. Um, how long do you think? Because I know you said it took over a period of time for you to look down and realize you had all this metaphorical evidence proving, you know, an indication, so to speak. How long a time do you think it took you?
I think the shift really started, I think it took about 7 years, to be honest. Around 2009, I had moved from pure skeptic to the center, and I labeled myself the scientist. Wasn't that I was looking to prove or disprove, believe or shut down. I wanted to empirically measure. I wanted to get evidence. I wanted to get data. And to be a scientist, that's very pure because you're going to follow the evidence. And you don't have, or you shouldn't have, a preconceived agenda in mind. You're just, okay, you'll have a hypothesis. Let's see if this hypothesis plays out. If it doesn't, all right, let's modify, let's change direction. The sky is blue, but if we get enough evidence that says, no, the sky is not blue, it's purple, even though our entire life we're going, yeah, that doesn't feel right. The sky is clearly blue, but if the evidence points that way, we have to shift. We have to say, you know what, I was wrong yesterday. And there's nothing wrong with shifting your platform to say, okay, I believe differently today because I have more evidence, I have more data to support that.
How many scientists and people out there do you think are operating on the basis of bias rather than truly following the science?
I couldn't formulate a number and that, but I do believe that as human beings, we all operate on belief. 100%. You believe in the numbers, you believe in faith, you believe in the guys in the white lab coats who say, don't eat this, that'll give you cancer. Or you believe the guy with the pointy hat in the Vatican saying, oh, don't do this, you'll go to hell. Very few people have actually done the research or gone down the rabbit hole to find the answers. We're taking it on faith. So be it
Mm,
science or religion, we're all giving ourselves the permission to believe.
I agree. The reason I brought that up, and I know it's an impossible question for you to answer because how many people, an
How many
arbitrary
people?
number,
3.
16 million, yeah, three or whatever. It's like, I wonder how many scientists out there don't truly follow the scientific method because they are blinded by whatever in their head saying it's not this, therefore I shouldn't follow that path. And I think
Probably a lot.
yeah, that's the thing. And I want us to get to a point where newer people don't think that way and they're not colored by a bias or a religion or whatever else so that we
It's
can just have pure data.
it's going to take some time, and I feel like my place in the paranormal these days, I'm standing at the center of a bridge. I'm trying to construct that bridge because on one side, we have the academics, the scientists, the people who are following the scientific methods, they're writing papers, they're looking at us thinking like, oh, they're crazy, they're wasting their time. Parapsychology, which in itself is the redheaded stepchild of the scientific world because they're not held in high standards, pretty much as any field of science was in the beginning. You know, when
Mm.
you first come to the table with a new idea, they look down at you on their noses and say, "Oh, that's not accurate, no." And you have to do a lot to prove that you belong. So, okay, you have the parapsychologists and the academics on one side who are like, okay, we fought really hard for really long to get to this place and it's nowhere, and we're not going to let you ghost hunters tear it down. On the other side, you have the paranormal enthusiasts, the people who watch the TV shows, put on their black t-shirts, and every weekend go and run around and go on ghost hunts. Okay, they're in the fields. They are doing qualitative research. These guys are doing quantitative research, but they're not talking. They're not
Mm.
learning from each other. The academics really need to loosen up and say, okay, there's some value that can come from what they're doing. And on the other end, the enthusiasts need to serious up a bit and say, okay, you guys are doing things sloppy. You're wasting a lot of time. You're focusing on things that aren't important. You can learn a lot from these guys over here. So if we could bring them into the center and say, all right, you don't have to abandon your method, but just let's all come to the center and find a way to utilize everything that we are all doing to get to the common answer of this question we've been asking since the beginning. Why are we here? What's it all about? What happens when we die? We don't have those answers yet. We don't even have a theory. We have hypotheses. We have Hollywood's logic. Oh, cold spots. Yep, that means it's a ghost. Does it?
No. What is it?
No, it doesn't.
Before we get into your investigation work, because I got loads of questions regarding that. How has it moved since when you first started to now? I.e., were you that guy that people sneered at because you were running this type of investigation versus the science you're running now? Are you perceived better off now? Is what I was getting at.
It's a good question. I'm People ask me this all the time. I'll go to events, I'll do things, and they'll say, "Oh, how do you think it went?" And I never know how to answer the question because I'm too close to it. Obviously, I hope it went well. I did my best. I did the best work I could. Now, how we're perceived in the field or how I'm perceived in the field, um, When I first started, it was 2002. The television explosion of paranormal shows didn't occur here in the States till 2004. That's when Ghost Hunters came out. So I was operating in a time that was very frontier for a program that is. That's not to say there weren't people doing it. There's plenty of people, researchers doing the work before us. The Warrens, you had Hans
Mm.
Holzer, you had people who were doing it quietly, doing it subversively. Now, today, it's the paranormal. You say you're in the paranormal, you're akin to a rock star because people are like, ooh, tell us about where you've been. I mean, you've got a podcast about it. Look, we're talking transatlantic about this topic that we're both into, but back in the day, back in the 60s and the 70s, you couldn't come out and talk about it. It wasn't the paranormal. It was the occult. It was labeled differently. So the people who did it were faced not only with the challenge of how do we go about doing this, but once we're seen doing it, how do we spin that into an explanation? Like the Warrens. Okay, everybody loves the Warrens today because of the Conjuring movies. They've been elevated to sainthood status, but they were regular people,
Mm.
average Joes like you and I. They had their faults, they had their strengths. I have nothing to say about that, again, but you can say that they operated in a time where it wasn't glamorous to be so, and they had their detractors. They had their haters even then who said, oh, you're frauds, you're liars, you're this, you're that. And back then, there wasn't necessarily a court of public opinion like there is today because of social media. Everyone gets to weigh in. Back then, it was the newspapers, the three television channels we had growing up. It's a different world today. And now, with the 24-hour news cycle, you could do something not on the level. You could become a pariah for a day, but 24 hours later, everyone's forgotten it as they've moved on to the next scandal. And I really feel like I'm not a fan, despite the connectivity it has given us, I'm not a fan of social media because it brings out our worst aspects in a lot of cases.
100%. Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
so how I'm perceived, I guess it depends on the day.
Well, I would like to think your trajectory is this in terms of how you're perceived in a favorable light compared to a sneering light back then. I
I
imagine
would
that's
hope
how
so.
it's going. Yeah, I would hope so as well if I was in your shoes. Right, let's get to some of your investigation stuff. Can you
All right.
give me a story of one of your investigations, how you found out about the location, where you went, what the law was, what you expected to find, and actually what did you actually find?
These could be some long stories. It's a good thing there's a 2-hour
Yeah,
podcast.
let's do it.
Originally, when we first started the cable access show Scared on Staten Island, it's not like we were being called to locations. This was greatly urban exploration. So it was, ooh, that place looks cool. Let's go. Let's go check it out. Let's investigate the rumors we've heard. And it wasn't until later that people started calling us and saying, hey, we're having some problems. We don't know what to do about it. We hear you're into this stuff. Can you come check it out? And even today, I'll get emails. People will contact me on social media and say, this is what's happening. I think I have a demon. Why do you think you have a demon? Oh, because things are moving around and I hear voices. And I'm really scared. Okay, so that equals demon. TV shows, everything's a demon. Everything. I don't know how it is over in the UK, but here in the States, every show, oh, it's dark and it's horrendous and it's gonna drag you to hell. It's not really that way. We live on a haunted planet. Where we are, they are. And just like in our waking world, there's good people, there's bad people, everything is gray. No one is really, you're evil all the time, you're good all the time. We're an amalgam of states. I myself, I'm a house of many rooms, so that's why I never know how to perceive myself. But um, one of the most poignant cases when people ask me, yeah, Brian, what's the scariest place you've been to? What turned you into a believer? Whatever the question is, it always seems to come back to this one location, and it's called the Grand Midway Hotel in Windber, Pennsylvania. Now, I wrote about this in my book Grains of Sand, Tales of a Paranormal Life. The chapter is called Circle of Fire. So that kind of gives you a little hint of where this is
Demon!
going.
Yeah.
Demon! And honestly, I label it as a demonic case, but it is the one case in all my 22 years of doing this that I can say that. Um, I'm fine with it being just one. I am not a person who sees it as a badge of courage to tackle the demonic day in and day out. That is not me. I don't want that. And I really hope that the general public never encounters that. But in Windber, Pennsylvania, this place, we were invited to come check it out. And it's out in the middle of Pennsylvania. It's in a mining town called Windber. It was named after the Berwind Mining Company, so they just switched the syllables. And the entire town existed because of the mining effort. They sent representatives over to Europe and they said, "Okay, come to America, work in the mines. We'll give you a big cash advance and we'll build you a house so that you can bring your family over later." Miners came. People rushed over and said, "Okay, we're going to make our way in the new worlds. We're going to have a better life." And when they got there, now literally, the Grand Midway Hotel has train tracks right in front of it. So the train pulls up, and the hotel is owned by the company. They said, "Oh, we're sorry to say that the houses, they're not ready yet. We're so sorry about that. But here, you could stay in our hotel. You stay at the Midway. We'll just take a little bit out of your advance for every week you're here. No problem, though. The house will be ready in no time. Meanwhile, you'll work in the mines. You'll stay here. Perfect." Now, you get a bunch of miners out in the middle of nowhere in a hotel. They started frittering away at their advance very quickly, be it alcohol, gambling, women. Those advances disappeared very quickly. And it turned out that now they are staying in the hotel. Now they owe the company, they owe their lives to this entity. And they're like, "All right, get to work. You've got to work off your debt." The song 16 Tons speaks to this. "I owe my soul to the company store. You haul 16 tons, and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in
Deeper
debt."
in debt. Yeah. Good song. That I like it.
That that was this place. It literally, and at the time there was no unions. The Molly Maguires were not a thing yet, so there was nobody to stand up for the worker. Allegedly, anyone who spoke up against the company would disappear. And it has been verified that there have been bodies found buried in the basements over time. Whether it was because of that or not is still
Mm.
unclear. But fast forward all the way to the present, there's been a dark history. It had changed hands several times. The mining industry dried up in that particular area of Pennsylvania, so it stood abandoned for some time. Now, meanwhile, out in California, there was a man named Blair Murphy, and he worked in the film industry, and he just wasn't happy. He wasn't being creatively inspired, so he said, "You know what? I'm gonna leave Hollywood and change things completely." He found the Midway on eBay, and he bought it for $11,000. He said, "All right, I have a hotel," and he moved over to this abandoned, dilapidated old building. And for the first 2 years, he didn't go into the upper levels except to renovate and to fix things. He stayed downstairs because he felt, "Ooh, this is weird. It's a little spooky in here." Now, a little bit about Blair. Blair is the son of um, morticians. They worked at his family owned a funeral home, so he's used to the macabre. He's used to that other side
Mm.
of existence, almost like a Wednesday Addams. He's a little strange and unusual, but we become close friends. And to help subsidize this renovation project, he started renting the rooms upstairs to artists, painters, poets, sculptors, anyone who just had a creative vibe. And it became a very bohemian atmosphere where you have all these people just existing, and they're living and they're working and they're it was very much a communal effort to renovate this place. Now, because of this, one of the people who came, a painter named Dylan, He's very important to the story. He stayed in a
I'll
room.
write his name down. Hold on.
Yes, Dylan, write it down. Dylan stayed up on the third floor at the end of the hall to the left. Last room to the left, as it was. And he would paint, and he would paint all these different things. And as artists do, he liked to partake of substances. So he would partake and he would bake. And in the heat, he would bake. In the summer, he would suspend himself from this, in this rubber suit, this rubber latex suit from chains onto the ceiling. Very strange, very
Mm.
out there. But he's an artist. And he's getting high while he's doing it. He figures, hey, it worked for the Beatles, it could work for me. So he starts painting more and more fantastic and garish imagery. Just the things he's painting are out of this world. And he starts painting the same figure over and over and over again. It's almost like everything starts coalescing into focus to this one figure, this gray, tall, thin, eyes in its hand, flames, horned, very alien looking thing. Finally, after many, many times going and painting and having trips and painting this figure, the figure told Dylan its name. He said, "This is who I am." Okay, boom. Now, when it comes to demonology, names are important.
Mm.
Names have power. If you know it's something's name, you have power over it. It can exert power over you. And for the most part, Dylan has already made this covenant of contact. So he is connected. Also, when it comes to demonology, it's about territory. We are territory. You see in the movies, yes, people get possessed, they take their souls, and yes, while that's true, territory, like a room, is also territory. If you give it permission to be there, it will say, yes, I'm taking it. What's next? What can I have now? Through Dylan's actions, he gave this thing permission to occupy his space. All right, it now has a foothold in the midway. Eventually, Dylan says, "Okay, this is all too much. I can't take this anymore. I think I need to take a step back." He leaves the midway. He takes down most of his paintings. He burns most of his paintings. He reforms. He cleans himself up, becomes a Jehovah's Witness. Exit stage left for Dylan. But as I said, he gave permission for whatever this is to be there, so it stayed. And whatever it was now causing activity that is felt in the rest of the hotel. Now, at the time, a demonologist was living there. His name is Adam Bly. He works with the Vatican. He's known in paranormal circles. He's a demonologist. He lived upstairs on the third floor, opposite ends of the hotel, opposite end of the hallway. So they're diametrically opposed.
Mm.
What became known as the demon room, Dylan's old room, that end of the hall, Adam, that end of the hall. They are literally opposite. On Adam's doorway is a beautiful painting of the imagery of the archangel Saint Michael slaying the dragon. So he has chosen his side. Now, because Blair is kind of a weird guy. Now, to describe what the Grand Midway looks like then and today, I describe it as the Munsters meets the Addams Family meets a Spirit Halloween store. I don't know if you guys have that over here, but Spirit Halloween stores are like the scavengers of retail. Every Halloween, anytime you have an abandoned place or a place that closed or went out of business, a Spirit Halloween will pop up with all their Halloween decorations.
Yeah, we don't necessarily have something like that, but I can understand what it is. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So this is a weird place, and you have all these interesting characters living there. By the time we got there, okay, things have been happening. And again, because it's such an odd place, the owner felt kind of a little, I don't know, he felt, I don't even know how he felt, but he didn't mind having a demon in his hotel. He's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, like
all
you
right.
do. Yeah.
It's like people who own great cats as as pets. It's like, oh, you have a full-grown tiger in your house. Yeah, that's maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but that is going to bite you in the ass
Mm.
eventually. But yeah, he's like, look, I don't bother it, it won't bother me. I've got a demon. All right. Adam wasn't having it. Adam liked to bless the hotel. He's like, we have to clear that room. He's like, no, 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 no. I'm fine with you blessing the house. Leave that room alone. Again, I don't know why people do what they do, but that's what was done. So we get there, and when I find out we're going to the Grand Midway Hotel, I reached out to a mentor of mine, John Zaffis. John is the nephew of Ed Warren. He's been in the paranormal now for about 50 plus years. He's a fountain of knowledge. And when I found we were going, I said, "Yeah, I'm gonna call John and see what he knows about the place." Called him. I said, "Hey, John, do you know a place called the Grand Midway Hotel?" "Yeah." I said, "Well, we're going there this week." And he's like, "All right, buddy, I'll see you there." All right, great. All right, John's gonna be with us. Famed demonologist John Zavis. That's gonna be good to have in our corner. We get there. Not only is John there, but Rosemary Ellen Guiley,
Oh, yeah.
prolific author and researcher. She's like the female Hans Holzer. She's got tons of books, is so knowledgeable. We miss her every day. But she was there, and that was where I met her. I said, "Oh, who's this? Okay, cool, nice to meet you." Adam was there. We met Adam for the first time. So we have two demonologists, a researcher and author. We have like the all-star team ready to go for this investigation. And we were set to be there for 2 nights. Now, at this point in time, what was Scared on Staten Island and Urban Exploration had morphed into more of a black shirts paranormal team like you would see inspired by the TV shows. We had several people on our crew. We did things a certain way. We had the gadgets, and we planned for a 2 night investigation. So when we got there, we're loading in our equipment, we're figuring things out, we're meeting the new people. That first night was the science sweep. That was where we went through with all the gadgets, did EVP sessions, everything that you're used to seeing. You know what we got? Nothing. Zero. Zip. Zilch. Nada. It was a quiet night. And I said, wow, uh, my skepticism is not being dissuaded. I don't understand. Like, this is supposed to be the demon place. What's going on? No, after we had stood down for the night, Adam came to me and he said, well, Brian, I want to take you upstairs because I want to show you something. I said, "Ooh, okay, what do you want to show me?" He goes, "Come, I want you to feel something so that when you experience this in the future, you know what you're dealing with." I said, "Oh, okay." So we went upstairs to Dylan's room. And at this point, no one lives in it because the paintings have been taken down. Most of the walls are bare. They're just the slats with the occasional piece of art that still remains. But the room is a skeleton of itself, thereby even enhancing the mood of whatever is supposed to be here. I'm in the room looking around. I've got my meter. Nothing's happening. He goes, curious. It's almost as if it's hiding. It's elusive. I'm like, oh, it's hiding, is it? And again, my skeptic red light is going off. I'm like, this is, I don't know if I can buy this. But I was raised Catholic. All the old teachings, the old lessons, angels and demons, these things still have purchase with me. So I figured, okay, if nothing else, we can have a good conversation about this because he's very knowledgeable and because he works with the Vatican, he's Mr. Holy Roller himself. So we had a conversation. I said, "Well, Adam, demons, come on. God's a cool guy, right? Can't they just say, we're sorry, we messed up, we repent, and then be let back into God's kingdom?" He goes, "No, no, 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 it doesn't work that way. Angels have far seeing. They could see from the beginning of time to the end of time. They knew the consequences of their actions, and yet they still chose to follow Lucifer." It's like, oh, he's like, they are stunted beings that had incredible minds, that had this eternity of possibilities, and now they're limited, and they're cursed with the knowledge of what they lost, and they hate us for it. oof, this conversation was getting very heavy. And over the course of 2 hours, we were talking about the war in heaven, the role of angels and demons, what they want with us, everything that goes into this struggle we have here on Earth. And again, not to say that I'm believing all of it. My upbringing is allowing me to hear it.
Yeah,
And
that's what I was going to think.
very heavy. It's on my shoulders. I'm like, oh my God, this is too much. And after the conversation, I go downstairs and I talk to my buddy Chris, who at this point in the team is the skeptic. Since I've switched to scientist, he moved over to skeptic, and we keep a balance. I told him, I said, Chris, okay, this is what I found out. This is what Adam told me. But this is what, and he told me the story of Dylan. This is how we found out that information. I said, okay, this is what we're dealing with. What do you think? Chris the skeptic just kind of starts giggling. He starts laughing at me. He's like, oh, come on, that's a load of BS. Chris is a stout New York skeptic. He doesn't believe in any of this stuff at this point. And interestingly enough, when we first started the show, he was in the middle. He's like, well, maybe yes, maybe no. But over time, not finding anything, he was like, yeah, there's probably nothing to find. And he moved over into the skeptic space. Whereas I did the exact opposite. I said, there might be something to this. We stayed at the hotel that first night. Second night comes. This is when our psychic arrives. And this is good. And this is what we call the three-pillar system. The three pillars for any good investigation is you have a psychic, a scientist, and a skeptic. Three different viewpoints to make a more well-rounded approach, a more well-rounded investigation. We didn't tell her anything about the place. We gave her no background. We gave her no information. We just said, okay, voila, tell us what you feel. Now, for this second night, everything changed. John and Rosemary had to leave because they had lectures in the area. Adam had to go to work. He was a prison psych at the time. Blair, the owner, he worked at a bar, so he was gone till 4 a.m. He was out on the other side of town. Half of our team, their wives wanted them home. They're like, all right, you've done playing with the boys enough. You got to come home. So it was just me, Chris the skeptic, Lisa Ann, our psychic, and our case manager. So there's only 4 of us alone in this 32-room hotel. Lisa Ann starts her sweep. She goes through all the psychic stuff she does. She's feeling this. She's sensing that. She's, okay, this is... and she's giving us lots of little stories and anecdotes here and there. Finally, we get up to the 3rd floor. And she gets to the end of the hall. She goes, all right, I think I'm about done now, unless there's anything else you want me to look at. Look at Chris. I said, hey, Lee, that room. You didn't go into that room. And her face she disassembles. She goes, all right, if you want me to. She clearly didn't want to go into that room. And she thought we wouldn't notice and could get away with it. So we go in the room. And there's the 3 of us. Now, it's important to note that the structure of our investigation this night was different, because normally we did the psychic and the scientific things separate. All right, that was fine. I did my stuff the night before. But usually when Lisa Ann did her walkthrough, we had our buddy Greg with her. And Greg was kind of very open-minded. We call him Even Steven, because if you say black, he'll say, well, maybe it's white. You say left, he's like, maybe it's right. And he self-balances. So whenever she says things, he'll say, oh, well, tell us more. And he's a good companion for her for this. And we're still making our documentaries. So again, this is all being filmed. Since Greg had to go home, I had to hold the camera. So now I'm filming. And Chris, the skeptic, was hosting her and asking her around. And he pulled no punches. If she said something, he came at her like a skeptic. Like, oh, how can you say that? Oh, how can you believe? Or where's the proof? And they're very good friends. So it was an amicable sparring match.
Sure.
And here I am. I'm filming it all. So this is the first time the 3 pillars have ever done a walkthrough together. We always did things segmented. We always did things separately as to not influence each other. But all right, through necessity, now we are together as a unit. And when we go into the room, Chris has his meter out, and the meter, well, this is a phone, but hey, he's got the meter out and it's going off. Now, as I mentioned, the room is a skeleton of itself. So if there was any wires, we would see them. If there was any phone lines, if there was anything that would be causing this, it would be bare. We would be able to visually detect it. This wasn't the case. So, okay, Chris and I are now preoccupied with this. What's causing this? What is giving off this signals? Oh, maybe it's the power lines outside. And we're occupied with that. But meanwhile, Lisanne has already tapped into someone. She's like, "Oh, I'm sensing a little boy. He's. I think he's been abused. He says he's sorry. He's sorry. He won't do it again. Please don't hurt me. I won't do it again." So she's doing her thing. We're doing our things. We're almost now independent of each other because we're so focused on what we're doing. Finally, Lisanne just calls out. She goes, guys, you're not paying attention. He wants to know if he can tell his story."
Okay.
Now, does this seem odd to you? Does this raise any red flags for you?
What, the little boy wants to tell his story?
Yeah.
Well, it's weird that because most abuse victims don't want to say anything, is what I would my brain would go to first. What am I missing?
Now, for this, having worked with Lisanne many times before, Spirit, when they finally have someone who can see them, are overjoyed to say, "You can see me? All right, I have so much to tell you. This is how I died, and this is what happened, and this is where the money, but don't give it to him because Doug's a jerk. Don't let him get any of it." They are just like a waterfall. Just the information comes, and she takes it as she can, translates what she can, and gives us the story. Now we have a spirit that says, "Oh, I would like to tell my story. Do I have permission to do so?" Permission is key.
Hmm.
Almost like the vampire lore. A vampire can't come in unless you invite it in. It's the same thing with demons. They can't harm you unless you invite them in, unless you give them that permission, as Dylan did to be in his life. So now Lisanne is on this precipice where something is saying, "Oh, can I tell you my story?" And it's presenting as something very innocent. Like, yes, she wants to take care of it. And she's yelling at us, "Guys, you're not paying attention." And when I heard this, I thought back to my conversation with Adam, who was telling me about how demons operate, how this works. And I said, "Oh," I said, "Chris, Lee, come on, we got to take you out of the room." We took her down the hall and we spilled our guts. We told her everything we knew about Dylan, the room, the demons, the paintings, everything, because we wanted her to have all the information.
Okay.
Now, it's kind of funny because if there is indeed a demon in the room, taking her two doors down is not going to hide our intention. It's not going to do anything, but it made us feel better. So, Lisanne, she's Italian. She's a New Yorker. She's a mother. She does not like to be messed with. And
And she's got a rolling pin.
and sh
Yeah.
and we said, "All right, well, we can't force you to go back in the room. Lee, what do you want to do?" She's like, "I want to go back in there. I don't like being messed with." I said, "Yeah, here we go." So back down the hall, filming the whole time. We're marching down. We go into the room. And once we got into the room, everything, the entire atmosphere has changed. Our meter is still going off, but now it feels heavy. It feels very stuffy, like it's hard to breathe. No longer is it a curiosity of, "Oh, what's in here?" Now it's a, "You are in the lion's den." And Lisanne said she saw this figure. It's about 7 feet tall, gray, melted face. It's very skinny. And I'm thinking, wow, it's almost like that painting. The paintings Dylan was making. Okay. She goes, it's no longer a child. It's now this thing, and it's threatening me. It's telling me what it's going to do to me. It's going to hurt us. It's going to. And I'm saying, I'm not afraid of you. Chris and I obviously can't perceive this conversation going on. I'm
Hmm.
filming. He's got his gadgets. At one point, Chris scanning around Lisanne. And Lisanne says, okay, every time I try to get a good look at him, he goes behind me. So I turn around. He goes behind me. Chris is like, oh, he's behind you? He's behind you right now. Yeah, okay. And he steps into that space where this thing supposedly is. And you see him kind of shake. He's like, oh, what? I was like, Chris, what's the matter? He's like, I felt like something ran up my back, like an icy finger just ran up my spine. Not once, not twice, 5 times something was running up his spine. Later on, Adam would explain to us that it might have been this entity trying to find an access point, trying to weaken him, trying to see if it could enter in some way, if it could, because it was Lisanne had her defenses up. She wasn't going to be intimidated, but Chris, skeptic, right? Who knows what was going to happen?
That's
Almost like Ray.
disconcerting knowing that, though, isn't it, later on?
Well, we didn't know at the time, but it's almost like Ray in Ghostbusters 2. He's looking at the painting, then all of a sudden he's possessed by this thing. Maybe that's what was going on. Now I'm filming this. My back is to the wall, and behind my head, I heard a voice as if someone came right behind me and just whispered something. I knew there couldn't be anyone behind me. On the other side of the wall was the hallway, and there's nobody there. So I said, guys, did you just say something? Like, no, we didn't say anything. I said, Lee, did you say something? She goes, no. And because I was filming, I had headphones on. She was mic'd. So I thought maybe she just whispered something, and she did not. And I said, well, I could have sworn I just heard something. It came up behind me and just whispered something. I heard a sound. And Lisa was like, that's weird, because right at that point, this thing was trying to tell me its name. I'm like, no, 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 name. Okay, Chris is getting touched. I'm hearing things. She's communing directly with it. It's saying, you are you afraid of me? No, I'm not. Well, you'd better be. It's threatening her. It's threatening her. And she's like, guys, they could banish this thing by painting this room in bright colors, bringing statues of different deities and different religious figures in here, and it's telling her, shut up, shut up, shut up. She's like, yeah, it's telling me to shut up. It doesn't want me to tell you this stuff. It's threatening me. And I'm thinking, okay, you know what? Yahtzee, bingo. What more is there? We've come here on an investigation to find proof of something. We have physical contact. I'm hearing things. She's communing with it. Our meters are going off. You know what? Time to go. We've got what we came for. Then if we tarry any further, I feel like this could be dangerous. So Lisa answers, okay, I want you guys to back out of the room. Through my training, I know how to not let it follow me, but I want to make sure it doesn't follow you out of the room. All right. Chris and I back out of the room. Now I'm still filming. Shooting into the room. She's got her back turned to us. Chris is standing next to me. I'm legitimately freaked out at this point, and Chris is also. Chris never has dealt with anything like this, but I said, okay, I'm mentally, I'm going to go and I'm going to pull something out of the bag that was told to me. I don't know if it's relevant or not, but this is what I've heard to do. I said, all right, Chris, just imagine yourself surrounded in white light. Metaphysical people, psychics have told me, yes, you envelop yourself in a bubble of white light, and that will protect you. Now, I've known Chris for many, many years. We're best friends. I know, not only is he my best friend, he's the skeptic. I know he's going to make fun of me for saying this. So even as I'm saying the words in slow motion, just imagine you. Even as I'm saying the words, my brain is like, okay, what's my rebuttal going to be? Because he's going to come back at me. I have to think of something to say after this. White light. Chris says nothing, and we're both standing there in the hallway, imagining ourselves enveloped in white light. Then Lisanne comes out of the room. We snap out of it. She goes, I need to find Sage. She takes off down the hall, down the stairs, down the hall, down the next flight of stairs. She's looking around. She goes to the bar. Oh, somehow she finds a stick of sage. We're like, what? how did you find that? She's like, oh, my spirit guides told me. Fine,
Fair
fine,
play.
fine,
Yeah.
whatever. We retreated outside to the train tracks. And we're sitting on the train tracks. I'm shell shocked. I'm literally rocking back and forth, going, what did we just experience up there? And Lisa Ann is saging us. She goes to her car. She gets a rosary bead. She's praying on us. Chris's vision. He's like, "You guys are looking weird. I'm having a hard time focusing on you. Like, you guys look distorted." I said, "Oh." And again, something tried to affect him. Something tried to physically affect him. So now he's having physical uh, difficulties be- because, and we didn't know that at the time. And to make matters worse, all right, we're on the train tracks, which I said was in front of the hotel. The window to the room is right up there. We feel like it could be watching us, and we had to stay there that night. That was where we were staying, so we had to spend another night in the Demon Hotel. It was a crazy night. We all stayed up. We didn't feel like going to sleep, and we all found excuses to all be in the same room until
Yeah, I bet you did.
till we felt better. Later on the next week when we're putting together the documentary, Chris wanted to pull that moment of the imagine yourself surrounded in white light because the absurdity of the scientist telling the skeptic some hippie new age BS, at least that's what we thought, was ridiculous. And we thought it would make a humorous moment for the documentary. But as it turns out, we caught an EVP on the camera
Oh,
in
I.
that moment. And again, okay, we had checked everything else off the box. Now, here's another piece of evidence. You hear me say, Chris, just imagine yourself surrounded in white light. A couple of seconds pass, and then you hear, can you break out the circle of fire? And another voice says, die. What?
Mm.
Literally, what? This was a confusing now EVP. If you're lucky, you get a word. Maybe you get a couple. Not only did we get a sentence, we got a conversation. Uh, actually, at the time, we didn't think it was a conversation. We just thought it was one long string. This thing asking us a question and then telling us to die. Like, all right, well, that tracks with the demonic. Yeah, it doesn't want good things for us. But what does this mean? So we figured, okay, we know two demonologists. Let's put it to them. They said, guys, circle of fire. What do you think this could be? And they said, well, because Adam blessed the house up until that room, the entity might see the blessing as fire, as harmful. It can't get past it. Almost like you see on Supernatural or other things,
Mm.
that circle that keeps the entity bottled within that space. They said, okay, I guess that makes sense. But the die, it's like, yeah, well, it wants you to die. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. To make matters even more confusing, the voice that said, can you break out the circle of fire, sounded just like Blair. We know for a fact Blair was across town at his bartender job. He couldn't have been coming to us and whispering us, and there was no way physically for him to be around us. And we know that spirits can mimic voices, so it was very unusual. Now, this story, there's more to it. There's there's more things that happened in later years and later times. I went back there with the show Haunted Collector, and this is all in that chapter, Circle of Fire, in my book. But it was a life-changing experience. And that's why I will tell the 45-minute story every time someone asks me, what's your scariest experience? What's your most poignant adventure? It comes back to this. And I've been back there so many times since, and not
Why
necessarily.
though? Why are you going back? Are you chasing the feeling, or are you chasing more information?
No, I've been back. Actually, I've been back for something called writer's jail, where Chris and I incarcerated ourselves there for a week with the purpose of writing a 90-page script to sell. Uh, in 2016, we got into the Guinness Book of World Records for painting the world's largest Ouija board on the roof. You can go to Google Earth, you can go to Google Maps, and you can look at zoom in, and there it is, still
Good
there
on you.
today. I've been back there for many, many creative exploits. and since I'm friends with the owner, the demon in the demon room is long gone. It's been taken care of. But again, that connection, I find that the paranormal, even though on the surface is us looking for evidence of the dead, of what happens, but in reality, it's speaks to our connection with the living, the friendships, the bonds we make. And I think that's why it is so popular because, all right, yeah, sometimes I'll make fun of them, like, oh, the black shirts, and they're going to get together and whatever. It's something social that you get together with like-minded people on a Friday and a Saturday on a weekend, and you go on a road trip somewhere and you have an adventure. And like, yeah, they're chasing a feeling. They're saying, I want to put myself in front of the danger. I want to put myself in the way of curiosity, in the way that when you were a child, you felt wonder about the mysteries of the world. And if anything that the paranormal has given back to me during that skeptical phase I was in college at the beginning of this journey, crisis of faith. I didn't believe in anything. I was skeptical of everything. Now the paranormal has given me back that wonder of that kid who was watching in search of, and I'm like, wow, I have so much more to explore now, and I'm ready for it.
That is quality. Sweet. That's giving you a gift along the way. I like that a lot. I have two questions for you on this scenario. The first of which is when your psychic friend was up there and she looked along and said, "Yeah, I'm done now," and you said, "No, come on, the old room." Having spoken to her since, what had she felt or heard in that moment to stop her going up there?
The way Lisa Ann works, she's very much a mental medium in that she sees things play out as scenes. So anytime she'll
Okay.
get, like a transmitter, transmitting a TV broadcast, she'll walk into a room, get a sense, and then translate and describe what she's seeing based on that information. What she said she felt about that particular area was just uh, uh, something heavy. And it was one of those things where she's like, I don't know if I necessarily want to deal with this, even though that's what we were there to do. We never push her, we never force her to do anything she's not ready for. So when she said, and honestly, if we didn't have that information about what that room was, we might have let it go and never
Mm.
crossed that threshold. And she's like, oh, she's done. Okay, good. Let's pack up. But because we knew what we were stepping into, at least we thought we knew, we said, okay, please let's push it a little more. And I think with anything, we have limits. There are things that we're comfortable with that at a certain point you say, nope, I can't go any further. I I draw the line here. And for her, I think she was trying to draw a line.
No, that's fair. That's fair. And the second question I have for you is regarding Dylan. I remembered his name because I did write it down.
You write it
Um,
down.
yeah. Did he create the demon, or was the demon there and he gave power to it and allowed it to come through? I.e., was
That's
it a golem sort of thing?
that's a very interesting posit. That's the first time anyone has offered that up. Interesting. If we are to look at this from a standpoint of creating tulpas and manifesting energy, maybe it could be that, and this could also be put under the summoning heading that
Hmm.
maybe he wanted it, maybe he thought about it, and he drew it to him. Maybe not necessarily creating it, although that could be a possibility. I don't necessarily think that the one man alone could have created something that had so much power and energy and force as it seemed to when we encountered it. Um, One of the postscripts to the story that Sunday morning, as we were packing up to leave, somehow Dylan had heard that there was an investigation going on in the hotel that was looking into his old room, and he was curious and he came by. Dylan at this point very much was the shell of a man. I don't know what he was like before, but he seemed he seemed drained. He was just almost like a an addict. He shook. He was meek, and he asked. He's like, "I heard you saw some of my paintings. I would love to see my paintings again, just if you have." And he looked like an addict looking for a fix. He was almost like Bilbo
I was going to
in
say that. Yeah.
in the
Wes,
movie, and he
one more
wanted to
time.
see his ring one more time.
Yes.
And I thought of that. I'm like, nope, sorry, bud. No, yeah, we didn't see your paintings. We don't know what happened to them because I wasn't going to give him that fix. I didn't want him to. "Urgh."
Yeah, do that face.
I didn't want to see that face. And again, just as an addict, people who have dealt with possession, who have dealt with demonic influence, they are like addicts. They could be freed from it. They can be exercised. They can be separated from whatever is tormenting them. But it's a lifelong journey that they always have to be on guard because there can be a relapse. There can be a repossession because, yes, these forces now know you're vulnerable. We
Mm.
got to you once, we will get to you again. And I didn't want to put him in the line of fire that way. So we just said, yeah, sorry, bud, don't know, but hope you're doing all right. And he kind of shuffled off, but I'll never forget the look in his eye, just this sorrow and this I've lost something. So much a Gollum who lost the ring and was just like, oh, my precious, and will do anything to get it back.
Mm. It's a mind warper, that one. I love it. Let's move on from that particular case and just go generic for a moment. Of all the
Yeah.
investigations you've personally been on, what percentage would you say convinced you that stories were or are true? I.e., is it like 5%, 10%? What do you think it is?
This answer is colored by my perspective at the moments of said investigation. So when I was very
Okay.
skeptical, I thought, yeah, you're just crazy. You're just making things up. Um, Today, and again, as I said, I'm skeptical of the people who report it. There can be what they think is going on, what they want to be going on, and then there's the reality of what actually is happening. And in my studies in parapsychology, so much of it comes from us. You talk about poltergeists, and while they call them poltergeist, actually literally means noisy ghost, noisy spirits. Uh, my producers on Paranormal Caught on Camera, anytime we have a video that looks like that, they're like, "Oh, so Brian, do you think this is a poltergeist?" And every time, and I don't think it's ever made it to air, but I'm like, guys, a poltergeist isn't a description of a type of ghost. It's the behavior of the ghost. Just like a child can be noisy and knock things off and cry, you're not going to call that crybaby. Oh, you'll call it a crybaby at the moment, but you're not going to say that is a crybaby. No, it's a child throwing a tantrum. That's not descriptive of its being, of its essence. So the traditional poltergeist in parapsychology often comes via a person exhibiting psychokinesis over their environment because of stress, because of a change, because of something, and usually it's unbeknownst to them, so they're scared because like, oh, we don't know what's going on, and it doesn't come to a spirit explanation until those things have been rolled out. Now, these days, uh, I usually apply the three basic concerns of parapsychology when I go to any case. And the first one being, is it authentic? Okay, if I could find those mundane rational explanations, again, the once I've eliminated the impossible, if the explanation still is a big question mark, like, oh yeah, we eliminated what it couldn't be, but what is it? Yes, okay, this activity is authentic. Now, concern number two, how does it work? All right, we've determined that something is happening in your home. What could be causing it? All right, back to parapsychology. We talk about PK. PK is this imagined unit of measure, so to say, and that PK, we're using it. Our minds are generating it to either do one of two things: ESP or psychokinesis, the gaining of knowledge or the influencing of the environment. And this is very much like the Force, the light side and the dark side. The light side is passive for information only. The dark side, aggressive for attack. It's psychokinesis, ESP. And I've seen this, and as I'm studying and reading through my notes, I'm like, wow, Yoda had it right all along.
Never for attack.
Only defense. Which side is stronger? You will know. We could do this all day.
We could, literally. Okay, let's. I like that answer, by the way, and I love we got into Star Wars, and there's going to be a bit of that later on for you. So I know
Okay.
you'll like that. I want to branch into the technology side of things and talk about spirit boxes and any other technology that you work with. So, spirit boxes, what are they, and what are they meant to do or show an investigator?
Spirit box is the generic term for literally a device that is looking for real-time contact, ITC, which is instrumental transcommunication with a discarnate entity. Now, the term also has gotten watered down recently, and lots of different things have been called spirit boxes. An inventor in the States who runs a Ghost Stop outlet store, he made something called the Envoy Spirit Box. It's a passive communicator in that it invites the spirits to interact with it, but it's different from the spirit boxes like the radios that we used in the past 10, 15 years. So things that are called spirit boxes, again, it's become such a broader generic term, but it all started with a man named Frank Sumption. And Frank Sumption built what he called Frank's box. Now, for those who are knowledgeable about this, Frank's box was like the first spirit box that was a radio tuned to try to contact spirit. Now, this is again where terms get muddled. Frank wasn't looking to talk to ghosts. Frank believed he was an extraterrestrial from some nebula somewhere. He believed he was a purple fairy princess from some other galaxy, and he was looking to literally phone home.
Okay,
Whether
fair
this
enough.
was a mental thing or some revealed truth that was interpreted a different way, it's not for me to say, it's not for me to judge. But he stumbled upon this method of perhaps contacting spirit. Now, why I say the term is muddled, things are defined by the people who first observed them and through the understanding one has at the time of observation. So, one man's demon, we go to the Middle East, that could be jinn.
Mm.
Someone who maybe isn't religious will see that and be, oh, that's a gray alien. Again, the entity we encountered at the Grand Midway, sometimes I think, maybe that's a tall gray. Who knows? And if you're going to look into ancient alien theory and that, yes, everything we have in our religion and our mythology could just be the interpretation of aliens coming down. We didn't understand what technology was. That could be that. But back to the
Mm.
spirit boxes, Frank Sumption made this to contact spirit, whatever that meant, in whether it's aliens or whatnot. And it opened up this whole avenue of people now taking radios and altering them to just scans through the frequencies, trying to pick up on some communication. Now, there's different schools of thought. Some people think that, okay, almost like Bumblebee and the Transformers, that the spirits know what bits and phrases are on what bands at what times to be able to point to them really quickly to give their message. I'm not a supporter of that theory. When I'm using a spirit box, I'm looking for communication that's riding the wave, that's above or below the song or the talk or whatever is actually happening. Um, like anything else, it needs a carrier wave.
Oh,
Everything in
so
the
you're
universe
looking
is
at it that
energy
way.
and vibration.
You're not looking at the actual message of the human message, so to speak, within the airwaves. You're looking for something piggybacking along.
I'm looking for something
Interesting.
that attaches itself to it because, I mean, again, you can hear songs and you're like, yeah, yeah, you can hear words that make sense. I mean, half the time when we're using spirit boxes on investigations, you're asking basic questions like, okay, how many are with us? What's your name? Where are you from? Which will be answered by a DJ who's like, you're listening to 1043 Baltimore. This is Bob Jones, and we're going to get into the next hour with some Rolling Stones for you coming right up. Numbers, names, locations, all these are answered by terrestrial explanations. So therefore, it's suspect. It's cognitive bias at work. So I'm looking for those things that are whispery, because no one's whispering on the radio, especially if you hear curses or other types of language that you know, okay, uh, sensors are not going to allow that to get forth. That's what we're listening to. Additionally, just from an investigation standpoint for process, I always use a password. I'll institute a password that I make up on the spot to say, all right, if you're out there, you can hear me and understand me, say this word.
And you're saying that in your head,
I'm
or
saying
do you
that
say
out
it out
loud.
loud? Oh, okay.
I guess you could say it's in your head if you were alone, but if you said it
Hmm.
in your head with other people, they wouldn't know what the password was. Um, this cuts down the odds because, all right, we're human beings, we're storytellers. You give me 5 words, I will make those words make sense to where we are because that's what we do. We
Hmm.
make order out of chaos. So, of course, everything that comes through a spirit box is going to make sense to the lore, the homeowner told you or the tour guide said this is the spirit that's supposed to be here. You're like, oh yes, that makes sense. But I have people pick words that are ridiculous, like Naugahyde, or purple, or whatever. If they say that word in that moment, okay, A, it shows that spirit can understand us, can hear us. And B, yes, they can interface with the device. And that cuts down, like everything that comes after that is a little less suspect to me. It's like, okay, you've interacted with me. You've said the word that I asked for, and you have to make it not something that you might hear on the radio, like oh octopus, and unless you're listening to the Beatles and Octopus's Garden, but you'll hear that in a sing-song way. Um, Cognitive dissonance in our brains. We hate blanks. We hate things that don't make sense, so we're always trying to fill it. So the spirit boxes, again, I've seen the evolution. People are now attaching them to preamps, to speakers that filter out the noise. And I question, I think maybe sometimes we need that noise. You might be filtering out with that what you need. Um, we're seeing lots of different things. And I don't know if you heard about it over there. When this first hit, I think it was like maybe 2007, 2008. I'm not exactly sure of the year, but there was an event at the Stanley Hotel in Colorado where a Frank's box was being used, and a prophecy came forth. I don't know where it came from or who it came from. That's a little muddled, but they said that there was only 30 people on the planet who had the spiritual discipline and the ability to connect with these devices to make them work. And at the time, everyone's like, oh my, oh, everyone wanted to be one of those 30. So the
Yeah.
names, the competition started, oh, it's us. Oh, you're, to the point where at that point in my development, I'm looking at it, I'm like, Spirit Box? Oh, come on, that's ridiculous. Very skeptical. How can this work? How can this make, oh, 30 people? Does that mean if you're outside the 30 and you use it, is it dangerous or would it just not work? Could you be using it improperly and calling in something you didn't intend for? And that's, I mean, that's the case for anything that we do in the paranormal space. There's always a danger. There's always a risk. But that prophecy, it's funny. Now everybody has a spirit box. Everyone uses a spirit box, so you don't think twice about it. So was the prophecy bunk, or are we just now in dangerous territory, throwing caution to the winds? And so many people I know have never heard of it. And I remember it being huge
I've
at the
not.
time.
I've not heard of that. And I've been listening to Coast and all those sort of things for many, many years. And that doesn't ring a bell for me, that one.
Yeah,
But
I
is that 30, is it also a challenge, though? Yeah, only 30 people can do it. And then that inspires the human sort of ego to say, actually, I can. And then
oh, it's
more people
ego.
get into it. So is it that?
Entirely ego because everyone wants to
Hmm.
be one of those 30.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to be of the chosen few. And if you are of that, you are now above the unwashed masses and the black shirt community who was just, oh, look how cute. He's using his spirit box. Oh, he can't use it. Only I and the 29 others can actually do the work.
The special 29 Jedi. Now, was that message, only 30 people can use that, was that a spiritual voice, like a result of the box, or was it a clever sales technique to sell more Frank's boxes?
Honestly, at this point, I'm not sure. I have to go back and research because I know a couple of people who were there. I'm gonna have to go back and find out, yeah, how did it come about?
Hmm.
Because again, at that point in my development, I was so skeptical. Everything was arms folded and at arm's length. So uh, I just thought it was all BS. So I probably didn't get to the bottom of that. But
Hmm.
it's funny how many people these days have never heard of it. And to me, I feel like, yeah, that was just somebody trying to be a gatekeeper.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Of the spirit boxes, what do you think is the best evidence out there of a result that we've had that almost, it doesn't have to be even be yourself. It could be somebody else that they've like gotten rid of all the impossibilities. Look, it could be paranormal. What do you think?
In my years using spirit boxes after I got over the skepticism, uh, in being on investigations where they've been used, I've heard some interesting things. I've heard people speak in voices that they claim, oh, that's definitely my grandfather, or that's this, or that's that. I was on an investigation in Hollywood, California, for Haunted Collector, where we were investigating the old home of Orson Welles, and I could have sworn I heard his voice in that deep timbre that he had, and at the same time, when we were doing the session, my eyes started to tear up. And for me, that's a physical tell. I know that when I'm kind of connecting or in the presence of spirits, sometimes my eyes will just water up for no reason. And I can't prove it. I've
Hmm.
never carded a ghost. I've never gotten their ID, their verification up. All right, sir. Thank you for that.
You may
Uh,
enter, yeah.
but again, it goes back to faith. We believe in certain things and we take things on faith that, okay, I'm satisfied with that. That being said, it's important and ethically sound to keep certain things close, and especially if you're working on a case that affects someone's life, certain things you shouldn't tell them or uh, build up a situation when you don't have facts. It's one thing to say, well, I think this or maybe that, but you can never ever say for sure, at least not yet.
Hmm. Other technology, what other things do you use on your investigations? What else is there?
Uh, the producers on Haunted Collector, every episode they're like, "All right, so what do you got for us this time?" And they must have grown up on the Bond movies because Q always had something new for Bond, some new gadget, some new device, something that would come through in the third act. And they were hoping for that third act wow factor with us as well. But when it comes to paranormal devices, well, I think it's amazing that in this day and age we have paranormal devices because when I first started, we didn't have them. We used ropes, chalk, baby powder, toy cars, just things to try to get them to interact. And if there was anything electronic we used, it was gleaned from an electrician's kit or a construction toolbox, an EMF detector, things of that sort. Now we have devices specifically designed to aid the paranormal researcher in gathering more data. But here it is. It really still is only under two categories. It's either EM based, be it a strip or a light or a get whatever is going off, and there's a flux in the EM field that's causing that to go off.
And that's
Or
electromagnetic, presumably.
electromagnetic. Or it's something related to ITC, instrumental transcommunication. Now, instrumental transcommunication is anything using something electronic. So when you're doing an EVP session, that's ITC. It falls
Okay.
under the umbrella. It's like the adage, every square is a rectangle, but not every rectangle is a square. So the producers were like, "What have you got for us that's different?" I'm like, "It's really it's the same two concepts. We can only dress it up so many different ways. You can go old school, use pendulums, dowsing rods, what have you, dowsing methods, which would bring it to three methods. But yeah, it's really only those three. So uh, you look outside, you look at the road. There's lots of cars on the road, lots of different manufacturers, but it's still four wheels, an engine, a chassis. It's kind of all the same. But it's amazing that we have it at all.
Hmm. Did you do your homework, by the way, and did you bring a new gadget tonight, like I asked?
Tonight,
Yeah.
no, I didn't.
I'm joking,
I
by the way, don't worry.
I, I have this, but it's for show.
Oh, that's okay, that's something. We'll take that. Um, thinking forward, that's the
Spiritually
thumbnail
with
there,
us.
Brian. Thinking forward, what tech are you hoping will be created to assist you or to assist others in the future?
It's a good question. I mean, when it comes to an investigation, I'm looking to collect data. I'm looking for correlations. I'm looking, and that's the thing, as I said earlier, we have no theories yet. We barely have hypotheses set up. And so many people spend their many weekends, 52 weekends a year, running around to this place, that place, like, oh, we got EVPs, we got this, we got this. And they have a lot of personal experiences. They have a lot of anecdotes. But where's the data pointing? No one is collecting the data. No one is pooling it, cross-referencing it. There's very little peer review going on. And what I would like is to get closer to something substantial. I would love it in 30 years. If you could pick up a book, flip through it and go, the Cano efficient says that at 16.2 milligauss per square foot indicates a haunting at a location. We don't have that information yet. I usually use that as a trick question in my lectures. I'll ask, all right, people, at what concentration of milligauss per square foot indicates a haunting at a location?
60.
Sometimes you'll get people guess, and they'll just 3. Other people go, I don't know. I'm like, that's the answer. I don't know. We don't have that data yet. And I feel like the more data we collect and have people, again, on the academic side and the enthusiast side working in tandem to try to formulate, what's going on. We know how gravity works. We know how electromagnetic works. The fact that you and I are talking at all means that we've figured out telecommunications, how energy goes through wires, transatlantic, up to a satellite. It's amazing. Our phones are amazing. These are wizardry. If we had this in our pocket 200 years ago, we'd be burned at the stake for being a witch. We need to get closer to facts, to information. It's out there. It's not mystical in that it cannot be known. There's formulas, there's math to it. We just haven't grasped it yet. And that's what I want from any new equipment. I don't need anything with more lights or more flash, or a lot of it is for show. When I do events, I mean, personally, this is what I've noticed when it comes to gear. There's a bell curve. And when you first start out, you're at the bottom of one side. You don't have anything because you don't know what to get. You just started. I don't know what to get. And you start teching up. And you start getting gadgets. And then you get to the points where I was during Haunted Collector. I was dragging around 2 Pelican cases filled with equipment. Again, because the producers wanted it and it's good for TV. But we thought, all right, you need all this stuff. And in defense of a lot of equipments, for your teams out there who have, your tech guy who has everything, it's like a toolkit. You don't need every tool every time, but a hammer, a screwdriver, a wrench, there's times for it, but it's good that you have it. That's when you're at the top. You've got everything and you're dragging everything to every investigation, but if it's taking you 3-4 hours to set up all these cameras and all this equipment, you're missing what's right in front of your face all along, and you're forgetting the most important piece of equipment, which is your body, your senses, your 5 senses, your 6th sense, your 7th sense, which is
my sense of style.
well met, not bad. Oh, but it's common sense.
Yeah.
Not everything's a ghost, so it's okay to hear a noise and it just be, oh, somebody dropped something over there, and it's not Old Man Withers who's come to scare us. Once you get to the top of that bell curve and you realize, all right, this is too much and this is taking too long, you start going down the other side, and that's where I'm at. When I'm on investigation, I have a web belt that I just have around my waist. I have my EMF, my millimeter, which is a 7-in-1, so technically I have 7 gadgets with me. My digital audio recorder, because EVP for me is the pinnacle of evidence. Pendulum. I have a pendulum, and I use that from time to time. So if it's portable and I can bring it with me, that's what I'm looking for. I don't want to be messing with gadgets and suitcases and all this wires and stuff, because again, it takes away from the experience.
And you'll miss. It's like the people who take a shitload of cameras and things to concerts. When you do all this stuff, you're missing the show. That is back to that, isn't it? Really?
I, when I go to concerts, I admittedly do take some video. Like I'll take my favorite song, but I'll put the camera right in front of my face so it doesn't disturb anyone around me. But everyone else, they're holding
I
the
know
camera,
that's annoying.
and my field is just filled with cameras and cameras and cameras. I'm like, are you watching the show? Are you enjoying it? And I feel on investigations, yeah, so many people are looking down. They're not looking out. They're not looking up. They're not experiencing what they're supposed to. And when it comes to bias, like I was mentioning before, I try to go into places and I don't want to know the history. I don't want to know the lore. Oh, you want to tell me about your ghost? Zip it. I don't want
Mm.
to know until later. Because if you tell me that in that corner is a ghost named Bob, and Bob will tug on the hair of anyone who goes there, so many people will spend their entire investigation focused on that corner, and they'll be missing everything that's going on around them. Maybe it's not Bob. Maybe there's another spirit who's like, "Hey, I'm here too. Do you want to talk to me? All right. I'll be in the other room if you want me."
Hold on one sec, Brian. What's that, Bob? Shut up. Just telling Bob in the corner to shut the hell up.
Bob, you've been getting so much press, Bob. Scare some of the rest.
Right, moving on. Now, you've kind of alluded to this anyway, but one of my questions was, is the real tech the human body and mind, or is it actual physical electronics? Are we going to get to that point where we are all at the bottom of the bell curve and realize we don't need this stuff? Actually, it's us if we trust ourselves.
This goes. I could answer on either side for this one because I feel like tech can give us access to information that we otherwise wouldn't have or couldn't um, interpret. In the same way that my cousin Lisa Ann, as a psychic, I can walk into a room and go, "Ooh, I feel heavy. I feel like there's something here." I'll then have to call her in. I'm like, "Lee, what's going on here?" And she'll be able to translate that information. It's like, "Oh, he was an old man. He had heart problems." She's able to decipher the specifics. Now, I don't know if we'll ever have equipment sensitive enough to do what she does. Who knows? Maybe AI is the key to that. But I think the human machine is important and is probably still the pinnacle because we've been telling ghost stories back when we lived in caves. It's not a modern thing. It's not a new thing that all of a sudden we've noticed this. We've had the ability all along, and everyone is psychic. Everyone has that ability, but some have it obviously better than others. Others have honed it and trained it and can use it on a higher capacity than maybe the general public. But are we going to get to the end? I think we do need to rewind a little bit and open up more. Um, it makes me think of the double slit experiment when it comes to quantum physics and observation, entanglement, things of that note. Intent seems to be huge, and a gadget will not. Actually, gadgets are involved too. Mentioning the double slit experiment, when there's cameras looking
Mm.
at the experiment, the camera is intent. It's a proxy for us. It changed the way the particles displayed, and that still boggles my mind. So if technology is used as an extension of ourselves, then yes. As a replacement for ourselves, no. Uh, Consciousness might be the key. Consciousness might be the linchpin that opens up everything for us. And I think the more people are distracted by technology, they're not using their consciousness to connect in the way that we should.
Bang on. And I wonder, as part of this, rather than using gadgets to look outwards, we should measure us. Because maybe there's measurements coming off us to say there's the proof for a ghost because XYZ happens to our skin or breath or whatever, you know? That's
I've
maybe a
long
path we can
wanted
go
to do
down.
that. I would love to have, like, when people have sleep study experiments to see if they have sleep apnea. They have all these diodes attached to their heads. They have the different monitors. As cumbersome as it would be, I would love some sort of suit or like jumpsuit
Yeah,
people could wear that
definitely a
measures
helmet.
that stuff. Who knows? Like you could be all uh, outfitted up like an astronaut because you're getting readings. But again, then would that distract from the experience because you're thinking about all the stuff that's attached to you? Again, I don't know. I think there's room to explore both avenues.
I agree. The more I speak to people on the paranormal topics, the more it comes back to it's being all about what you said a minute ago, consciousness. And it's all in here. We're creating. It seems like we're creating everything. Therefore, to measure what we've created, maybe we're measuring a ghost, and I don't mean that, not pun intended, a ghost of ourselves, if you know what I mean. Strange
Well,
thought.
that's not a strange thought because I've long posited and I've long said, and it's funny how like I would think that it would take off more, but it hasn't. Maybe from the source, you get someone on TV with a bigger TV show to say it, everyone will adopt it. Um, People who call us for help, they're not sitting in the basement with a K2 meter waiting for something to happen, and then something happens and they call us. The average person, when they experience activity, they're doing dishes, they're folding laundry, they're going about their daily routine. Now, as I said, everything in the universe is energy and vibration. We are creatures of habit. We tend to do the same. We have our routines. We take the same route to work. You get up, you do things in a specific order. We are almost rubbing a groove into our local reality. And we're always expending energy. We're little bits of ourselves, skin flakes, hair follicles. We're leaving little bits of ourselves behind. Could this be that you're in the basement, you're folding your clothes, and out of the corner of your eye, you see a shadow. You turn, and it's gone. And you feel like something's there. You're always seeing something, but you can never connect to it. Maybe you have a paranormal group come over, and they can't get an EVP. There's nothing that they can interact with. Maybe this residual signature. Why does a ghost have to be of a deceased person? Maybe that ghost is you through your repeated actions over and over, your sorrows, your triumphs, your stress, everything that in your space is just collecting and formulating. And out of the corner of your eye, yeah, you see a shadow. You will never talk to it. You will never meet it because essentially it is just an echo of yourself.
Yeah, I like
This
that.
is
Being
this
recorded
is
in the
something,
rocks.
yeah, stone tape theory. This is something that we can't necessarily point to and say, "Ooh, we don't understand that," but that simple explanation dismisses it entirely. And we're not looking for ghosts, we're looking to connect with spirit. And spirit is that deceased person. Spirit is that extraterrestrial intelligence. Spirit is that multi-dimensional uh, being. Like it doesn't always have to be dead person. And back in the days of Hans Holzer, Holzer says, "Oh, a ghost is nothing more than a dead person looking for help." Maybe at the time that was the definition, but it's very narrow, and I think it's broadened to include a lot more these days, and we have to be aware of that.
I completely agree. I'm going to branch slightly ajar now into your TV work. Now,
Okay.
you've been on many paranormal TV shows. How far do you think the medium of television and those shows has pushed the topic?
It's a double-edged sword. It's good in that it gets it out to the masses. It gets the average person access to this mystery, this world. And again, when I was a kid watching In Search of, if that show wasn't on, I might not have been so inspired. I might not be talking to you today. My life may have gone on a different path. The documentary series and the history series, I think, are good in that it presents stories and it presents certain things that are being done out there. The reality shows, I say to take with a grain of salt. It's entertainment. Be entertained. None of them are documentaries, nor should they be treated as such. And to that end, I see a lot of people doing monkey see, monkey do, imitating what they see, but not knowing the why, not understanding, well, you're doing this, but why are you doing it? And when you do it, are you cognizant enough to gather the results in a meaningful way? So I think the shows have done a disservice in that respect. But again, the fact that you and I can talk openly about spirits and ghosts that we believe, this is a quantum leap from 30 years ago, where again, you had to gather in a dark library or in a basement somewhere and you just talked about the concept, or some people wrote books and they were ridiculed. Now you say, hey, I'm a parent. I'm at an airport and I go through TSA and I always get selected for random screening because my REM pods look like bombs. They're like, "What's this? What's all this?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm a paranormal researcher." They're like, "Oh, really?" They're excited. They're and they want to tell you their story. And again, it's that
Mm,
human connection. So many people I meet at events are skeptical, like, "Oh, I don't believe in any of this stuff." But I did get this picture a month ago. Hold on, let me find it. And they're scrolling, 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 and then it'll be a 45-minute story about how they saw a ghost. But wait, I thought you didn't believe. It's the connection. They just want the permission to say, you know what? I believe you. And at
mm,
the heart, that's what, when I was 10 years old, the movie Ghostbusters was so important. Because as a 10-year-old child, seeing that these parapsychologists dealt with the matter with tech. Yes, you don't need to be psychic because you could still connect with devices. And the second point, we're ready to believe you. And up until that point, the Hollywood, the movies that dealt with the paranormal was scary. It was The Exorcist, The Omen, um, Amityville Horror. So essentially, if you had a ghost, you're going to die, and it's going to be horrible. Whereas Ghostbusters was light and it was comedic, and it says, "Yeah, the world's going to end, but we're going to fight it." And
yeah.
Buster makes me feel good.
Going back 20 years, let's just say to when you started, at that time when you were going through an airport and you can consider yourself a paranormal investigator at that time, what did you call yourself if you were asked? A journalist or?
I well, at the time, I didn't really start traveling internationally or for lectures or with equipment in airports till much later, till the shows had already been on. So even if I wasn't recognized, or even before I was on a TV show and I had that stuff, I could say, "Oh, I'm a paranormal investigator." And they're like, "Oh, really? Hmm. Oh, okay. Oh, I love ghost hunters." I'm like, "All right, well, cool. That's what I do." Now sometimes people will recognize me, or again, as they're rifling through my luggage and they see 10 copies of my book with my face on, they're like, oh, hey, you're that guy in that show. Yeah. Oh,
Aren't you
cool.
that guy on the book? Yeah,
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 hey,
yeah.
you're that. That's you. That's you.
Um,
It's changed.
yeah. And again, hopefully for the better, which it sounds like it has. Do you prefer, personally, to do TV investigative work or your own if you do stuff on the side?
I prefer to do my own as far as gathering the data. Now, it's weird being in a position like mine because again, I've got a public forward facing. I have a Patreon page that I need to generate content for, but also on that page, I have an apprentice program where I teach people
Oh, cool.
parapsychology, ufology, pretty much anything they want to learn that I'm qualified to pass on to them. I have that available. So when I'm out there, I'm thinking, all right, I need to investigate for myself. I need to generate content for my patrons and YouTube and other things of that sort. And I have to do things that, again, reflect positively on my television pursuits, Paranormal Caught on Camera. I'm also the ambassador for the Haunted History Trail of New York State, which is a tourism initiative that shines a light on all the haunted places throughout New York State. And for that, I generate online content to showcase those things. So I'm juggling a lot of things. So whenever I go out, I have to make sure I check those boxes. But at the core of it, the most fulfilling ones are when I don't have to do anything for external sources, but that I get to really just be myself and enjoy.
Yes, I'm glad you said that, and I thought you would, because I think when there's no external pressures on us, we can just do X, Y, Z for the love of it rather than for the have
Yeah,
tos.
yeah.
Yeah, quality. Now I'm a big Star Trek fan, and you've obviously worked on the William Shatner show. Did you meet him?
I didn't, and it was
Oh no!
well, I've met him before because
Oh, okay.
I've been to many. Well, as a growing up, I was a huge trekker. I went to all the conventions, so I've met him there. But I've also met him like at places like Dragon Con in Atlanta when Haunted Collector was out. So I was uh, behind the table. He was behind the table. We would end up walking to places side by side, and I look. I'm like, oh, it's William Shatner. Um, for the Unexplained. The crew was shooting in New York. I'm in New York. They couldn't figure out a way to get to work with their schedule to get me on while they were in New York. But then they went down to New Orleans And they said, "Oh, we could film you down there." I said, "Oh, sure, fly me down to New Orleans. I have no problem with that." But because of the change of city, I didn't get to officially meet Shatner in that capacity. But I do have a William Shatner story where on Twitter, William Shatner's persona on there is just a curmudgeon old man who has earned it. He's allowed to say, "Get off my lawn," and we, "Yep, okay." He is not afraid to tilt with anyone online because, again, he's earned his place and opinion. Um, I don't know what spurned it. I had posted something, and William Shatner replied, and he goes, "I know who you are. You're the blah, 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 blah haunted items." And I'm looking down at my phone. I'm like, Captain Kirk knows who I am. I,
Did you
I
go,
was,
yes?
I was winning. I was above the moon that day. I was like, "Look, William Shatner, William Shatner." And I replied to him. He replied back. And I noticed at the time he was having a lot of back and forth with Grant Wilson of Ghost Hunters. Like he was engaging because, again, now he's in the paranormal space with his
That's
show.
right.
But the fact that he reached out to me unprovoked to say, "I know who you are, and I don't think he respects what I do," because he would use the eye roll emoji for certain things. I'm like, "That's fine. Captain Kirk can do whatever. I love all the movies. I love the original show. I'm a huge Trekker." Uh, so yeah, whatever. The fact that this man who has been to space knows who I am on this planet of billions of people, not bad.
Yeah, that can go on your tombstone, can't it? Shatner
Yes.
knew me, knew who I was. Yeah, quality. It's a strange one. You may not be able to answer it, but who's the best person you've worked with?
The best person?
Yeah,
I guess one would have to define best.
exactly. So it's a subjective thing for you. Who do you think your favorite person to work with has been? Or maybe that's a bad question because then you don't want to say, oh, it's
I'm
this one,
bad with
meaning
favorite.
it's not that one.
I'm bad with favorite. Like overall, if you ask what's my favorite food, my favorite song, my favorite movie, I can never answer because it depends on my mood.
Well, let
What
me scrub them
the
questions out then.
is uh I never know because I could be in the mood for one thing one day and something else the other. But as far as who my favorite person to work with, at this point in my career, looking back, I found like, all right, this past October is my college lecture season. That's when I travel around speaking to students and just giving them basic 101s. And I found that things I say, attitudes I've maintained, things I've learned that I'm passing on, I can't get this in and of myself. It doesn't just generate in me, with the exception of certain theories, like again, that shadow theory that I mentioned before, that I thought of. I'm like, yeah, well, why not this? But again, it's built off of the foundation of people who've come before, concepts that come before, philosophers, scientists, psychotherapists, parapsychologists. Looking back, sometimes I'll be editing an old video or an old interview, and I'm like, oh, oh, hey, I say that too. That's probably who I got that from. And I found that who I am is the culmination of all the people I've worked with before, all the ideas, all the teachings from all my mentors, from my colleagues, from even people I disagree with. It literally does take a village. It takes all of us, and this is why again I feel like I'm that man in the middle of the bridge trying to bring people together because this is not a competition in that I'm going to get there before you. I need you to get there. We need to all rise together, otherwise we're not going to make it. And the only the only thing in the paranormal community that I do disagree with, everyone's like, "Oh, there's place for everyone." Yes, there's room for everyone in the paranormal. There's not budget for everyone. And I think that's what everyone is squabbling over.
Yeah, everyone wants their piece, don't they? But they can't all
Everyone.
get it. Indeed.
Yeah.
Um, I want to briefly talk about your book before we enter the Koit zone. So your book,
Ooh.
Grains of Sand: Tales of a Paranormal Life. Why did you go the book route?
When I was in college, I my major was English, my minor was psychology because I had the idea that I wanted to write books. And that didn't happen. uh, Coming out of college, I found, okay, unless you're Stephen King or John Grisham, no one's going to pay you to sit at home and write. I had to get a job. And I had a myriad of jobs all over the map. I did so many different things just to enter this world of bills and commuting and taxes that, again, this is a lot of what knocked me down into that skeptical space. So for years, I thought I would love to write a book. I would love to write a book. Oh, I'm in the paranormal now. Oh, maybe I should write a paranormal book. And people would ask, Brian, when are you going to write a book? And I said, would I have something to say? And I never knew, would it be instructional? Would it be about a location? And I have friends of mine that are prolific. Richard Estep, Mike Richtsecker. They're just like books, 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 books. Oh, more books. They're just cranking them out, and they're great and they're intelligent. And I'm thinking, well, they wrote about that already. Why should I write about that? Or who am I to write about that? Who's going to listen to what I have to say? And for years, I was in my own way. And finally, one day, my manager said to me, Brian, you've got a lot of stories. I see you on stage telling your stories. Why don't you just tell your stories? Of course. And right after that, I grabbed a post-it pad and I'm just writing on each page, on each little post. I'm like, oh, there's the Grand Midway story. Oh, there's the Lizzie Borden story. Oh, there's that time I went to Oak Island. Oh, the Bermuda Triangle. And each of those post-its became a chapter, became a story, became a lesson that I've learned, that the paranormal has taught me, that in the moment I wasn't ready to understand or to accept. And because it was a grain of sand, it seemed inconsequential, but like the book, together, all these grains of sand made something that was substantial. And only I could tell my story.
Yeah, sure. And that makes sense to lead to this question I have for you, which is rather big and sweeping. And again, you may not be able to answer it, but I'm going to ask it anyway. If you had to somehow explain the universe and all the realms and humanity's involvement, what would you say it is based on your experiences?
In my studies, I keep coming across this bubble within a bubble theory, the I am, we are, in that. And again, this lines up with current theory that, oh, we're a simulation, we're a hologram, we're like this isn't the real world, this is a projection of something else. That this world we're in, this universe, no matter how deep into space we go, no matter how much we explore, we're still within that little bubble or the matrix, if you will. The real world is outside, and that could be considered spirit. Yes, that's the real world. So our incarnations here, these meat suits we're in, however many times we've come back to this bubble for whatever reason, this is not us per se. This is not the real us. This is just one aspect of it. And I did come across, I did write about this briefly in the book that it helped me resolve the dichotomy of determinism versus fate. I went to a Catholic high school, so they taught me all the oh this is the plan God has for you, and I railed against fate. I don't want someone else to decide what I'm doing. Like I should have control over my destiny. I should be in the driver's seat 100% of the time. But then sometimes certain things happen, and you're like, yeah, man, that seems like fate. Like it couldn't have happened any other way. There's a chapter called I Can't Go For That. I Can Go For That in my book that talks about that. And the bubble within the bubble kind of addresses that in that, all right, Brian present, 2024 Brian is going through his life. He's making little choices that have little effects, but there are some big guideposts, some linchpins that are like, this has to happen. I can choose little things in between, but then this has to happen, will happen, and despite me trying to get away from it, I will eventually end up at it. That's determinist. But who made that choice? I should be in charge of my own fate. But I was. Brian Prime will call him. That spirits, that culmination of all that we are, just the energy that is Brian. And however many times I've incarnated on this earth as different genders, different statuses, that Brian said, all right, I'm going to go down to earth this time and I got to learn this. So this will happen, this will happen, this will happen. I still chose it. Technically, Brian still chose it, unbeknownst to me, because we're limited. The meat suits, we can only understand so much. And I feel like spiritually, because of our limitations in this form, we may never understand everything about the paranormal because there's elements to it that are higher dimensional, in the same way that a two-dimensional being can't perceive a three-dimensional being because we have extra dimensions. Maybe we're hearing things and seeing things so uh, unclearly because maybe there's a fourth dimensional, fifth dimensional being that is communicating with us. Yeah, we hear you, but we can't see you. Where are you? I'm here. How? How are you here? Well, to us, we're simpler to them.
Mm.
Um, so I think that, but I think the more I think about it, the more I'm confronted with it, it seems to make sense. And I understand that I will never understand everything. It's too big. It's too
It
big.
is big.
It's like trying to tell an ant how to program C++, how to use Visual Basic, how to do what you and I are doing right now. It's like, don't know, I'm gonna carry this food over here. Just, oh, I'm gonna go do my thing.
Yeah. Leave trial number 4.
Yep.
Yeah, your bubble within a bubble thing is quite good, but it always leads to the question: what's outside Brian Prime? What's above the Brian Prime bubble? You know?
Don't know, man. I guess we'll find out when we get there.
Yeah, isn't it? It really is. And for now, we're going to enter our own strange realm as we enter the Koit zone. Koit zone! Just random questions now, even more random than I've already given you. So let's start with an easy one. What animal scares you the most?
What animal scares me the most?
Yeah.
I think anything in the ocean. We'll take a shark because I don't swim very well, and I'm at the mercy of anything in the ocean.
Do you go in the ocean because you know you can't swim very well?
I avoid it when I can.
Fair play. Even in deserts, just avoid it. You don't want to go in there.
Just do not go.
Indeed. Have you ever been locked in anywhere?
I used to frequent escape rooms, so yes, on purpose I would.
Quality.
I always enjoyed the challenge of, all right, I'm locked in here, but I know it's a game, but locked in a place that I couldn't get out of.
Yeah.
This body.
Yeah. Well, you can, can't you? If you, it's an action, but we won't go there.
Yeah. Well, there was an interesting movie. I can never remember the name of it, but it stars Robert Redford and that sad guy from forgetting Sarah Marshall, and I always forget his name. Jason Segel. The movie centers around the plot that Robert Redford, who was a scientist, empirically proved that there was an afterlife. So as a result, half the population of the world is like, yeah, our lives here are crummy. We're gonna off ourselves because we know we're going somewhere.
Yeah.
It was a very depressing movie. The concept is great. I don't necessarily recommend watching because it's freaking depressing. But yes.
Yeah. Do you know what? That locked in, I'm going to quickly just divert into a secondary story. About a year ago, right, I lost my hearing because I'd gone to a concert and it blew out my ears, right? And this one wasn't very good either. And I really hated it because I had that locked in feeling within the body and I couldn't cope with it. So I really could empathize with how, I don't know, disabled people or deaf people or blind people feel. And bloody awful. I don't want to go there again. Anyway, side thing. Can you change a car tire?
Yes, absolutely.
Excellent, well played. Not a lot of people can. I can't. I'm in the can't camp. Maybe I should.
I can.
You
And
can.
well, that's the thing. I have horrible luck with tires historically. No matter what car I get, what bicycle, what scooter, I always have tire problems. So it behooves me to be able to replace them.
Excellent. So Brian Cano, change a tire. I had
Yes.
to get that in for you. I know you wanted that one. Right, eggs. Do you like them? And if so, what is your cooking method of choice?
Scrambled. Unless I have an English muffin, then I'll go sunny side up just for a nice little breakfast sandwich. I don't often get them because you got to buy them by the dozen, and I'll only eat like two or three or four, and then I've got a whole bunch of them sitting in the refrigerator that eventually go bad, and they end up being wasteful. So, just the whole point of like a chicken embryo. And when you make chicken and you bread it and you put in the flour and the chicken, you're dipping chicken in chicken embryo. Something about that just seems weird.
I've not heard that before, but I like it.
It's just like
Chicken
it's
and
just
chicken.
wrong.
Yeah, it is wrong when you look at it like that.
Yeah.
Is Bigfoot real?
I think Bigfoot as a race or an entity could be real. I don't know if Bigfoot, capital B, like the guy who's been hanging around since the 70s, is necessarily real. I see the Bigfoot creature as potentially extraterrestrial or interdimensional because for as many friends of mine who are very big into cryptozoology and squatching and all that, I still ask, and I due to ignorance, I'm like, there's a lot of things I don't know. The evidence of life. Where's the elimination? Where's the Bigfoot poop? Where's the Bigfoot's offspring? Where is all the other things that we hold the creatures on our planet down to the chart to say, yes, we know this, the phylum, the kingdom, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They find two sticks in the woods crossed together, like, oh yeah, Bigfoot did that. It's like, how do you know this? Like, really? Is it like Banksy? Like, just it's
It was
signed
Bob
by
again.
Bigfoot?
Wasn't
But
it?
that being said, I think the answers to that would be, yeah, well, he's not a creature that is just out in the woods. Maybe he's interdimensional. Stepped in, made that footprint, stepped out. Um, if extraterrestrials are living on our planet, it's who's to say that one of them isn't big and hairy?
Exactly. I like it. Is there something in life you've always wanted to do, but just haven't done it yet?
I'm very much. I grew up in the era of collect them all. So to me, I'm always looking to check all the boxes. So been in movies, check. Been on TV, check. Finally wrote a book about time, check. I'm just looking to been on the small screen, check. I haven't released an album yet. And there's this there's things I haven't done that I'm like, all right, I've performed on stage before. I've been in a play. I'm opening. I'm running out of things to do. So yeah, I want to collect them all. I want to do it all. I want to go to the grave and say, yeah, you know what? Check, done it.
Fair play. Getting through them all quick and then not coming back again, not reincarnated because you've done it all.
Just in case.
Yeah. What was the? Oh, sorry, not what. When was the last time you were sick?
Probably a month ago. Had some stomach issues.
Lovely, lovely. I won't expand further on that one in case.
There was enough expansion going on.
Yeah, I bet there were. What movie most accurately replicates the paranormal phenomenon or experience, do you think?
Ooh, I don't know. Well, depending on what part of it you were on. Like I've seen a lot of spoof movies. I think there was one movie called Ghost Team with some comedy actors, and it wasn't that great of a movie. I think John Heder, who played Napoleon Dynamite, was in it. Another actor who played the Mac in all the Mac commercials was in it, and you'd think with all these funny people it would be great, but it was kind of like boring. But it accurately represented the building of a black shirt team and them having interpersonal struggles and whatnot. A good movie that I always recommend to people to display the possibilities of activity is The Others with Nicole Kidman.
Mm.
And
Yeah, good
I
movie,
can't
that.
say much about it because I'd be giving it away, but it's a good look at what we might not be taking into account.
Mm. Yeah, I did like that movie. You're offered a seat on the real version of the ship from Inner Space, starring Dennis Quaid. Are you accepting in order to be injected into someone?
Oh, probably not. I don't want, without getting dirty, I don't want to be inside anyone. I don't want to be injected into someone. Want it to be by choice and with permission.
It's always permission, isn't it, in this game?
Always permission. It's for me, it's the same thing. Inner space or outer space. Or the ocean. I'm terrified by something that big, that inhospitable, and how I could die. It's just like that. I mean, who'd you have in that movie? You had Robert Picardo, who later was the Doctor on Star Trek Voyager, coming after you as like the half-naked cowboy. You have there was a Wang Chung song on that soundtrack. You had Martin Short, who was just crazy, and I love the movie. I wouldn't want to do it.
Okay, that's fair enough. That is your answer, so I'm taking it.
Take it and run.
And here's the last Koit Zone question. Have you ever peed in a swimming pool or the ocean?
Oh man, the ocean probably. Um, the swimming pool probably as a kid. I can't even front and say, oh, I've never done that. As an adult, I show restraint, but as a kid, I probably, let loose on lots of chlorine cleaning systems.
You get points, Brian, for answering that one. Well played to you. That brings us to the end of the Koit Zone, which leaves two final questions. So
All right.
first is, what else do you like to do in your downtime? Any activities or guilty pleasures?
I'm very much a pop culture junkie. I love watching TV. I love watching movies. I don't watch paranormal shows. I don't watch horror movies. People think like, "Oh, you're in the paranormal. You must love this stuff." I don't. Because I do it in my free time because I do it for work in my free time, I watch comedies. I want to be in Middle Earth. I want to be in space. I want to be somewhere that I can't get to presently and just be entertained. Right now I'm a huge fan of the show Letterkenny, which is a
I don't know that
Canadian
one.
comedy, and it's just so intelligent, but also under the guise of simplicity, and I appreciate that.
What's it called? Letterkenny.
Letterkenny. Mm-hmm.
How do you spell it? L-E double T. Okay, yeah.
Letterkenny.
Oh, look at that up then. If it's
And
gets a
it's
good
and it's a thing.
recommendation.
It's a like it's not science fiction. It's about these people who live in this small town and the struggles they go through, and it's very literary in the respect that when I first watched it, I thought it was like, if Kevin Smith were Canadian, this is how it would be, but it got so much more deep than that. Uh, there's always a show opener where the main character just says something, gives an anecdote. But at the beginning of the seasons, and I noticed this is at the beginning of season two, they were doing these fast-paced little drops, and I noticed, oh, they're doing it in alphabetical order and using alliteration. I'm a huge fan of alliteration, so the fact that they were so quick with their quips, uh, quietly, I put it at the top of my viewing list.
Excellent. Well, I would definitely give that a look. And that leads us to our final question together. So, what are you currently working on?
Uh, I'm working on. I'm a person who, if it's something I have to do, if it's work, it's a bit of a bore. It's a bit of a grudge. But anything else becomes more interesting and more where my creativity wants to go. So uh, I started writing the second book, but now that I feel I have to do that, I'm like, "Arr." I'm always generating content from my Patreon page, which includes a something called Scared Solo Missions, which again brings me back to the well from my old show, but I'm doing it solo, just me. And the effects are minimal. The editing is minimal. I want it to feel like when you watch it, you're with me on that investigation. So I've been doing those. That's on my Patreon page. I'm again the ambassador for the Haunted History Trail of New York State. I created a paranormal card game called The Three Pillars. I'm always making expansions for that, even though no one sees them, no one plays it. Although the game has made it out to the UK, there are people in the UK who do own it. Um, I'm just looking for creative outlets or interesting things. Still waiting to hear on the next if Paranormal Caught on Camera will be renewed for another season. Fingers crossed on that. And always looking to do new and interesting projects.
Excellent. Open to a lot of things. Amazing stuff. Brian, thank you ever so much for appearing today. I think your stories were superbly told, well played on everything that you've digested to me here. So I appreciate your time. Everyone watching this, check out the links in the description to Brian's sites, YouTube's, etc. Links to the book. Go and get involved. Exactly. Brian, thank you ever so much.
Thank you, sir.
To watch other KoitCast episodes, please click the image top left. To subscribe to my channel, please click the image top right. Please like and share to help KoitCast grow, and most importantly of all, please click the notification bell so you never miss an upload.